fast at that again. That's a bit better, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, I think that'll do. Hello everyone. Yeah, I've been a bit quiet of late, haven't I? Which brings me on to the topic of today. Yeah, and I thought I'd just warm up a little bit. It's the question of burnout, or crash and burn, if you want to call it. Pretty much like I want to give some ideas about, like how to avoid it. Some areas to focus on. Welcome to the channel. I mean, like it's primarily going to be about like music making and that sort of thing, because I think music is the most it's the most captivating, the most powerful art form that we actually have. Next to like spoken language. Yeah. So I just want to give you some pointers about like burnout and how to manage it, how to sort of like how to avoid it. There are going to be times in your life where you're going to be under like tremendous pressure, for one thing or another, and you're going to need. It would help if you got somebody who can actually guide you through those things. And these. I mean, before you say, "Oh, well, Peter's on his high horse and he don't practice what he preaches and he's just likes the sound of his own voice, blah 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 blah." It's not like that at all. These are kind of questions which I ask myself, and which are kind of work for me. So a few years back, a few years back, I was working in the lean engineering group at De Montfort University. It's basically like like Lean Sigma and all, Sigma 6 and all that sort of thing. Total quality management, just-in-time management, production management, operational research, all that sort of stuff. And coming up with like the math models behind it, how to manage those things. So, but the thing is that like the more because like at the time, I was very into like 19th century like philosophy as well, and so I was thinking, well, you could be applying those same methods to like your personal life. So like the first question is based on like whatever you're trying to do. What value does it have? Now, we're talking about in terms of value. It could mean to you, especially to start off with. Obviously, like if you're a musician, at whatever stage in your life you're at, perhaps not so much if you're like a seasoned pro or whatever, but I mean, pretty much I would say like most of my target audience, will have day jobs or other things going on during the day, family, etc., etc. And we'll just set aside some time in the evening just to pick up the instrument and just play for a sort of perhaps 40 minutes, an hour or so, something like that. So in that sense, there's a lot of value attached to just finding some time for yourself, just to reflect on the day, just to unwind. If you are living with family or like a significant other, just say, look, I'm just popping in the room just to just have 40 minutes or an hour, just play. So that's, in that sense, that gives you a lot. Yeah, I would say that is very valuable. So in that sense, so if like your day job or the routine is getting on top of you, you're perhaps sacrificing some of that recreational time. You know, that's something to think about. It's something, yeah, it's certainly something I've been thinking about, because I mean, I have been fairly busy of late, and things like music have kind of been taking a bit of a back seat. But I mean, I'm getting back into it slowly now. Okay, now then the next part was a little bit more tricky. Is like the value to somebody else. Say, when you perhaps start getting a bit, a bit more proficient, you might want to form a band. You know, all right, get together with your friends, perhaps, put an advert up on a forum, or answer an advert on the forum, something like that. But then it's kind of a mixed bag, because like, if you're putting an advert up, then you're kind of reliant on whoever replies, who may not be into your kind of music. Likewise, if you're joining somebody else's group, then there's near enough, it's not always going to be like a democracy. There's near enough always going to be like one person who's like ringleader, you know, or like the person who calls the shots, or who writes all the songs, or whatever. So when so now you've got to start thinking about the value of those things. You know, like the key question there, you know, is where is it going? You know, is the band going to be are you going to be doing like open mic nights and things like that? Are you going to be perhaps doing function, you know, like weddings, bar mitzvahs and funerals, you know, that time-honoured path? Are you going to be like I don't know how familiar this is where you are, where you just, you know, you're trying to get yourself on at like one of like the local venues. You're not going to get paid. You might get a free drink out of it. But you know, your band will show up and you might be like third on the bill amongst like 2 or 3 others, because they're trying to fill that slot for that evening. You've got to ask yourself about, you know, like things, you know, what kind of value is attached to that, you know. So in the initial sense, you know, you want to get a bit more experience playing in a band, like fitting in with other people, making friends. So yes, there's some value there. But after a while, that whole just, you know, taking all your gear down to wherever, if you're in one of those bands which just like forever, like just seems to rehearse, you know, like there's like it seems like something like Doctor Who might have put a time loop on them or something, you know, they're just going over the same thing over and over again. That sort of Groundhog Day type band, you know, where mixing my metaphors here, aren't I? But you know, but that whole thing where like, you know, you're just going down there, you're just playing the same thing over and over again. Perhaps you're not really getting on with whoever is in the group, and you're starting to, you know, you're finding that like your ideas are not being picked up on, or maybe you've got stuff which is, you know, perhaps you're a bit too advanced for what they want to do, or it's not in keeping with what they want to do, or it's not fitting with what you want to do. Let's be honest about that. Okay, and then of course then there's the next step about that as well. But let's assume it's become a bit of a success. You know, that the band's rehearsing, you're all getting on really well, you're getting a good catalogue of tunes together, you're starting to play, you're booking venues, so you're starting to make some money back on the door and things like that. Maybe you've got a support slot with somebody. You're thinking about making a record or an EP, you know, an album, getting something released. Again, for experience-wise, that's great. But now you're kind of like, you're going to be in competition with every other band that's in the style which you want to pursue. So that then leads into like the next category from like the lean toolkit, we call it. This thing about overburden or underburden the process. So overburden, it might be like, yeah, well we'll play this. You know, there seems to be like lots of like sort of metal bands for some reason, or lots of indie punk bands for some reason. Very few sort of kind of like well, very few sort of like soul Motown type groups, or dare I say it, those sort of fusiony type groups. You say fusion to somebody, they'll say, well, what's that? You know, they might think of like a sort of R&B fusion, which in itself is kind of, yeah, it's okay. So you might think, yeah, I'm going to make my album or whatever. But if it's sort of if it's in a market where like there's loads of stuff like that, and none of this stuff's actually being vetoed, you know, it's like it's just your group, you know, like especially if you're releasing it yourself, you need some sort of sense, you know, how do you validate that your stuff is good? You know, you may not actually have the budget for advertising and things like that. You may have to try and start a social media presence and what have you. But even then, you've got to get the followers. You know, you've got to try and get, you know, people to watch what you're doing. You know, watch your stuff. And certainly from my experience, which is why I'm asking this question as well, is, you know, that question of overburden or underburden. Is there something there that could be tweaked just slightly to make this thing a bit more relevant? And then of course relevancy starts to come in as well. Now, over Christmas, I was watching a few documentaries about, you know, like like BBC Light Entertainment scheduling, and pretty much like Christmas Day. I know we're in February now, and you might be watching this some other time in the year anyway. But Christmas Day was pretty much down to 3 flagship shows for the BBC. One was The Generation with Bruce Forsyth presenting it. The second one was the Morecambe and Wise show, which is like kind of like a variety comedy show, you know, with bits of music and sketch comedy, that sort of thing. And then the third one was the Mike Yarwood Christmas show. Now, Mike Yarwood was this impressionist. He was really, really popular. And these guys, you know, they do a drawing in like audience of like 14 million, 19 million, but at one point, I believe. But then you've got like the thing, you know, like where, you know, Bruce Forsyth, you know, he's a very talented entertainer. He wanted to pursue other things. He was getting better offers from ITV. So BBC are trying to keep him. So like, you know, there's only so far they can up his salary to keep him sweetened in that role. Likewise with Morecambe and Wise, like Eric Morecambe, it's like half of the double act. He had like a second heart attack within like 18 months. But the BBC are still very desperate to keep them. So they said, well, rather than do like the usual a series plus a Christmas episode, or, you know, the Christmas special, why don't we just concentrate on the Christmas special? We'll give you the same money just to do that one Christmas special, and then we'll take it from there. And then they said, yeah, okay, we'll do that. That's not quite as pressured. Yes it is, because it's still got to get the ratings. And then of course there's Mike Yarwood, who, you know, at the time he was taking off, you know, like like the politicians that there were at the time. You know, people like Harold. You may not even have heard of some of these people. You know, Harold Wilson and Ted Heath and Dennis Healey, and then people like on TV. There's like, you know, like Frank Spencer. And because Mike Yarwood was doing impressions of Frank Spencer, pretty much everybody was doing Frank Spencer. And, you know, but they weren't actually doing Michael Crawford being Frank Spencer. They were doing Mike Yarwood, an impression of Mike Yarwood doing Michael Crawford being Frank Spencer, if you know what I mean. You may not even know who Frank Spencer is, but that shows it as well. But then, like, moving with the times, because these big flagship shows perhaps are only doing like the Christmas special, they're not sort of like having the series to gauge like the audience reactions to see, you know, what's working and what's not. It's like a year between shows, you know. And then towards like the, you know, like the late 70s, early 80s, you know, like the alternative comedy stuff starts coming in. You know, things like The Young Ones and Rick Mail, Ade Edmondson, people like that. And suddenly, you know, doing Frank Spencer, ooh, Betty, the cat's done a whoopsie, ooh, it's not funny anymore. And one of these documentaries, he was talking about how Mike Yarwood, he'd been booked into like a summer season somewhere, and he's still doing like Harold Wilson and Frank Spencer going, "Ooh, Bessie," and he's sort of like in these theatres for a whole summer season. He's like, look, he's getting like 30 or 40 people a night, and you know economically it's not viable. You see what I mean? So there's a sense of having to move with the times now. Musically, because music is very inventive, we shouldn't really be like looking back sort of 10, 20, 40, 50, 60 years ago. We should kind of like be kind of looking to develop what we've got to take it forward. And if your music's very niche anyway, then and it's not really moving with the times. You're not getting the numbers, in terms of like either views on YouTube, or in terms of people coming out to your audience, or in terms of sales, downloads, etc., etc. Then you're going to hit crisis point. So that's that's something to be aware of as well. So then there's a question of like underburden. Underburden the process. I mean, like overburden, underburden as well. Overburden. It might be perhaps you're just working on one area of your playing. There'll be other parts of it which you're not really working on, which could really open things out. Perhaps linking like more chordal ideas with what you're doing, or if you're more of a fusion player, bring a more sort of like the modern rock stuff in there. Or like if you are like a rock metal gent guy, bringing in some more of the the more complex like theory stuff in that. Just setting aside some time just to put some of that stuff in, and maybe just coming up with playing music, but it doesn't necessarily have a label for it at the moment. Just playing the stuff because it gels together, because people like it, but it doesn't really it doesn't have a name for that particular style as yet. And also like you go back to groups like the Beatles and Queen, and especially where you get a record of theirs, and over the whole album there'd be a variety. It wouldn't just be all one style. There'd be a variety of things. Like say take an album like Night at the Opera. There's heavy stuff on there, like what have we got on there? Prophet Song and Sweet Lady. But you're also getting things like Seaside Rendezvous, and and then you're getting like sort of things like Love of My Life, and then of course Bohemian Rhapsody, which is also got all the different within one song. So it's like it's that thing about not standing still, not staying in one place, but exploring all these other avenues and different facets. And if one thing is like it's just not coming together, then put it aside for the moment. Come back to it. Work on something else. So I hope you got something out of that. I mean, I hope it's given us some thought. I mean, like if you have got some thoughts, please put them in the comments. I want to do some more of these types of things, and maybe we'll look at some more playing sort of idea. Like incorporating taking these things into your playing, etc. I think we'll go from there. Yeah, alright, thanks everybody for watching. Welcome to all the new subscribers. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Please consider subscribing. And I'll see you next time. Right, thanks for watching.